Yeah, I have a huge network. But that's not because I went around with my little notebook and made sure, to call them once a year. So it's because we became friends, because we interacted, because we had something to say to each other. We contributed. So, so for me, networking, if you want to call it that, is not taking, not going out to gather a network. It's giving.
Are you working in research, trying to do the best science you can?
Are you a team leader, a research assistant, postdoc, PhD student, or any other type of scientist?
Are you looking for a place where you can sit, relax, and listen to inspiring people?
Well, we have good news for you. You've just found what you're looking for.
Hi everybody, my name is Renaud Pourpre.
And I am Jonathan Weitzman.
Welcome to the Lonely Pipette,
helping scientists
do better science.
Hi, my name is Maria Leptin. I'm currently the president of the European Research Council, or ERC, and I feel happy to share my tips and ideas and thoughts with a lonely pipette.
Thank you, Maria. So Maria Leptin studied mathematics and biology at the University of Bonn and the University of Heidelberg, followed by a PhD in Fritz Melcher's lab at the Basel Institute for Immunology in Switzerland, studying B lymphocyte activation. She then moved to the Laboratory of Molecular Biology, the LMB, in Cambridge, UK, for a postdoc with Mike Wilcox, working on embryonic development in Drosophila. In 1988, she became a group leader working on gastrulation at the Max Planck Institute for Developmental Biology in Tübingen, Germany. And then she moved in 1994 to become a professor at the Institute of Genetics, University of Cologne in Germany. She spent sabbaticals as a visiting professor at the École Normale Supérieure in Paris and a visiting scientist at the Wellcome Trust Sanger Institute in Hixton, UK. Maria served as the director of the European Molecular Biology Organization, EMBO, from 2010 to 2021, and she ran a group at the EMBL in Heidelberg. The group studies the mechanics of shape determination during development. In 2021, Professor Leptin became the president of the European Research Council, the ERC. She has won numerous awards. She's elected as a member of EMBO, the Academia Europaea, and the German National Academy of Sciences, and she's an honorary fellow of the Academy of Medical Sciences. Maria, thanks for coming to share tips with the Lonely Pipette.
I'm actually not sure tips is what I have, but we'll see as we get along.
So thank you very much, Maria. It's an honor to have you with us today. We always have questions to start with to better know you and your origin story. So let me ask you, tell us how you decided to become a scientist.
Well, I originally didn't decide to become a scientist. In fact, I decided very little in my career. So I'd studied maths and biology, as Jonathan said, because those were subjects I really liked at school. I was good at them, got good grades, had, gone on with the teachers, etc. And I was going to become a school teacher. But at the end of my training, I sort of freaked out because I couldn't see myself going to school every morning for 40 years and, teaching and correcting homework and the same for 40 years. And since one of the professors who taught a really interesting course at the university, a practical course, had sort of asked me why I wasn't thinking of going into science, I said at the time no. But when I got to this point, I thought, well, why don't I ask him and try out research? And that's what I did. So I went and did my PhD with him. Not much of a decision, just sort of happened.
So are there any times when you considered leaving science?
Yes, for sure, at the end of my PhD. So I had sort of the wrong idea about what research would be like. I had done one, you do practical courses at university, and most of the time it's just stuff that works. This professor to whom I went did a different kind of course. There were real experiments, which was unusual at the time. And then he did a follow-up course where I actually went and worked in the lab. That was fun. That was also a real experiment, but it happened to work. So I sort of got the wrong idea about what experiments in the lab are like. and didn't realize that most of the time they don't work. And also the institute in which I was a very unusual institute, the Basel Institute for Immunology, which had only PIs and technicians, and apart from me, only 2 other graduate students. So I was comparing myself to a peer group, which was clearly not a peer group, but a much, more senior, although they were young. They were often just out of PhD or postdoc, but, really highly select group of successful scientists. So it was incredibly frustrating to find out that, as far as I could see, I was the only one in the whole world whose experiments didn't work. And 5 years of that is tough. So I had thought I'd go back to one of my other loves and dance instead at the end of my PhD.
So what kept you going during those difficult times? How did you manage?
I don't know. I think I'm I don't like not completing something. If I start something, I do it. I just don't give up. Even at times when it may not be sensible or important to finish whatever I've studied. But, I was just saying, I've done this now for so long. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to do a PhD, full stop. I'm not going to fail. I mean, it was also enjoyable. It's not as if everything was awful. Not at all.
Sure.
Not at all. There's a lot of fun in it. A lot of, I published well as a graduate student. The colleagues and the lab was nice. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was enjoyable as well. But it was hard and frustrating. And so you ask yourself, why should I do this? But then everybody said, postdoc is just the nicest time in your life, the best thing you could ever do. And so I sort of decided I'll just have a look at it. I don't need to do it, but I'll just do a bunch of interviews and, who knows.
So we'd like to talk a bit about mentoring. So you were at the Basel Institute and the LMB. What are mentoring practices that you saw along the way that you then use in your own lab?
None. I mean, nothing that would be called mentoring nowadays. And it was just, of course, my PhD advisor sort of did give me advice. Actually, when I first joined the lab, one advice he gave me is by whom not to be seduced. I guess a man couldn't tell that to a young female student nowadays, but it was not unwise. But he also, of course, he advised me, of course, and he helped me. And, he had very clear rules. Every graduate student must have one paper they write all by themselves and publish as a single author, etc. So, you sort of absorb the ethics, the philosophy of the lab. He was completely, quality was absolute top. You could not ever compromise that. So you learn a lot like that. But there was no formal mentoring, nowhere throughout my whole career. It's always.
So where did you get the mentoring practices that you've used in your lab? Where did you pick them up?
Who says I have mentoring practices? I try to.
Well, we will be speaking to your mentees.
That'd be good. I'll be very, very interested to hear. No, I have been. I mean, of course, I've been asked.
Do you think mentoring's overdone? Do you think we make too much of a big deal?
I've been asked to act as mentor in external institutions. I don't know. I hope they got something out of it. It's it becomes a big burden. And then for my own lab members, of course, I try to be there for them. Of course, there are people who have entrusted themselves to me. I'm supposed to make it possible for them to do their work properly. You become emotionally involved with them. So, but there's nothing formal. It's just that I felt it's my responsibility to make their life livable in the lab for them. And for some, it didn't work. So a couple left. Not everybody has to match everybody. But I have to say, some of them had a hard time sticking it through, but we got through together.
Can you think of bad mentoring advice that you hear?
Well, this goes completely against perceived wisdom, but the idea that young people are constantly told they should network, I don't get. I mean, I don't even know what's meant by that. So, of course, what happens to me at meetings is that people come up to me and say, "Oh, Professor Leptin, I've just submitted this paper. What if I get bad reviews back? And oh, what do I do about my career?" I say, I mean, for one thing, don't ask me about careers. I've never done in my career what I'd planned. And second, of course, I'm polite to these people and talk to them and help them wherever I can. But then another person comes and says, "Oh, Professor Leptin, I've just heard your talk. I completely disagree with what you said, and you're simply wrong here. And let me tell you what I think." That's enjoyable. They're not networking. They're just being what they're supposed to be as scientists, namely critical thinking people. So I don't know, what's networking? One is what you do naturally as a thinking researcher, and that is listen to what others say and add your own thoughts to it. So what I tell people is, you've got to be an interesting member of the community. And you do that by engaging with people, not by sort of running around with a little notebook and distributing visiting cards or collecting visiting cards. So
yeah, it's more. I get for what you say. It's like it's just not being there just to be there or just to say, yeah, I'm networking. It's just to engage into really something concrete, a discussion that has meaning or purpose.
Yeah, and it's not done for some ulterior purpose. You could say I have a huge network of friends, and I do. My friends from grad school and from postdoctoral time and from my group lead time, they're directors of big institutes, they're editors of big journals. So, I have a huge network. But that's not because I went around with my little notebook and made sure, to call them once a year. So it's because we became friends, because we interacted, because we had something to say to each other. We contributed. So, so for me, networking, if you want to call it that, is not taking, not going out to gather a network. It's giving. See, that kid who comes to me and says, the stuff you just said in your talk is hogwash, is giving me something. They're giving me his or her ideas. Even if they're wrong, at least then we can discuss them. Whereas the other one is taking. And of course I give. It is, I give to the person who wants to take. But the one I'll remember is the one who gave me something.
Wow, thank you. That was really really cool. As a tips, I think this is really enjoyable. As a really like being honest, being there,
well, the
and
other
just
thing is
trying to connect with the people.
You've got to enjoy the stuff you're doing. Why else do it? You've got to enjoy it, and then you'll do it well. And you'll get something out of it. Your environment gets something out of it. Much more satisfying.
One thing is you took several sabbaticals as visiting scientists. And that's not the first time that with Jonathan we heard about that. So we wanted to have your point of view of what are the benefits of such experiences?
Well,
and why to do that?
The most important benefit is that you sort of put out your brain to air a little bit and let it receive other input. You can get into a rut if you're just in your own lab talking to your own group. Okay, you have seminars, you're part of a group grant, so you talk to people. But just getting out and looking at things from a totally different perspective is really good. And also as a more senior person where you don't spend time in the lab anymore yourself, but do stuff, you advise, you do still look at data, but it's different. And then to go back and do something yourself. It reminds you how hard it is to do stuff yourself and how you shouldn't be impatient with the people in your lab if it takes a while, and how you can fail. Not only that you can fail, but also in which ways you can fail. So all that is good. It reminds you what it's really like to do the science directly, and it gives you new inputs. I mean, you usually choose a place to go where you learn something completely new. And I think that's true for everyone. That's why people do it.
So are there drawbacks of doing that? Do you see any?
I don't see
side
any.
effects? Then?
Some people don't do it because their children are at school. So we just took our children and put them in another school. So of course it's inconvenient to uproot yourself from your house, garden, pets, whatever, your routine in your own lab, everything that works well, your music teacher, God knows, but it's worth it. It's only half a year or 9 months.
So you told us that this is interesting for senior scientists, but could it be recommended for young scientists, do you think?
Well, they don't have, how young? I mean, postdocs are still, still in that period. They are not yet, grad students are not yet in a situation where they're sick and tired of doing the same thing. Well, I mean, on a small scale, of course, they are, and I was. But, you're still very much in a taking in phase anyway. There is no saturation. Postdocs, same thing. Of course, they should go to meetings, they should go to conferences, they should share their thoughts. If they need to learn a technique, and there are plenty of fellowships that allow you to do that, they should go to other labs as well. I did that during my postdoc. I went to San Francisco, to Stanford, to collaborate. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. Yes, you should do that. I mean, you can't do a 9-month sabbatical as a postdoc or a grad student. You've got to make sure that you get your own project to work, but do take time out and learn from others by all means.
So you said you haven't decided anything, but we wanted to ask you, how did you decide to take on the presidents of the ERC? How did that?
Well, again, that wasn't exactly a decision. So I was sort of looking forward to going back into research after the end of my tenure at EMBO and been writing up grants and stuff, taking on new graduate students, looking for options for places to do that research. But then I was proposed by a number of members of the community, and was asked if I would do this and so of course I thought, well, I can't say no, but most likely, the chance a million or so. So I continued to pursue my setting up, planning for setting up a new lab. But that's not the way it went.
But you did decide to say yes.
Well, yes, but it's not that I said, okay, when I'm done at EMBO, I will close down my labs and go into science, fully into science management. In that sense, I didn't decide it. Of course, eventually you'll have to decide. As with everything else, I then decided not to become a dancer, but to become a postdoc. But it's not that I planned it that way.
So what are your hopes for the ERC? What do you think the ERC will achieve during your presidency?
Well, I hope it'll just continue to achieve what it's always achieved, namely to select the very best researchers across Europe, across all disciplines, and allow them to make the wonderful discoveries they make. Evidence says they're wonderful. Several Nobel Prizes. Some of the preparatory work that eventually went into the COVID vaccine was funded by ERC. I mean, you name it, tons of things. So ERC's got to be enabled to continue to do that, and ideally even broader and even more, because the projects that are not funded are equally wonderful. I mean, it's really difficult for the panels to make the decisions among those that are interviewed, whom to fund and whom not to fund. So we could use a lot of more money. We'll hope that politicians and citizens in Europe will have a better understanding of the need for fundamental science and allow this to happen in the next framework program. So that's one thing, stabilize, enlarge. Yeah, you have a question?
What is the key feature of that? Is it the investment in fundamental science? Is it the freedom given to those very best? What is the key feature that is the success of the ERC?
It's bottom up. It's bottom up, peer-reviewed and selected by excellent expert panels. I mean, a lot of time goes into finding the panel members and making sure they work well and, guiding them, helping them by the agency. So, yeah, it's the complete freedom and the selection based only on excellence through open-minded top experts.
How would you respond to the provocative suggestion that the ERC, these mega grants, the rich get richer, and this creates an inequality because, as you said, lots of the people who don't get funded also
Yeah.
Excellent.
There's inequality. It would be nice if it was,
If we could fund everyone.
if it could be spread more evenly. But excellence in research is not spread more evenly. This also goes for other grants. If you are in a big center of excellence, whether it's Cambridge or Paris or Vienna or, Bangalore in India or whatever it might be, it's easier for you to attract funds, to attract good postdocs. It's all self-reinforcing. And the only way to change that, to counteract that, is for organizations or countries or regions to create an environment where researchers are happy to work and have good conditions. And we can see that works. There are countries that have done that. Lithuania has been amazing. And they're attracting ERC grants and top-level world-class researchers. Portugal did that a long time ago, 20 years ago, and they're reaping the benefits. So it can be done. It's not the fault of the panels or the ERC that this is unevenly distributed. And I should say, sometimes it is thought that it is the panel's fault and that people are just blinded by the glamour of these research centers or people who've published hundreds of papers or have attracted many grants. That is not so. The panels I've seen very much take into account the ease with which a researcher can write a grant. So it's clear if you're in a supportive environment, it's easier to write a good grant. You have colleagues right there whom you can ask who will read your proposal and tell, don't write it like this. So if you're coming from one of those centers of excellence, it's harder than if you're coming from a remote place where there isn't much on the ground. And the panels take that into account. They say, well, here are two similar grants. This person has had it easy. This person has had to struggle. So, why don't we reward the one who had to struggle? I've seen that time and again.
Right. So it sounds like actually maybe or maybe I get it wrong, but is that also a mission of ERC to try to promote or to raise those centers that are not attracting today scientists and to help them to rise to a level that is as comparing as others?
I would not say that's a mission of the ERC.
Okay.
It clearly isn't. The mission is to choose exclusively on the basis of excellence. However, the panel members are not robots or automatons. They're people. They're people with empathy and sympathy. And so that's the examples I just gave right now, that they, of course, feel they want to be fair. They want to encourage and reward those whose research arises in less welcoming, less supportive environments. So it's more on an individual basis. But, it wouldn't help if the grant that came from such a place wasn't good. It has to first be excellent.
So do you think Europe is well aware of the importance of fundamental research? Do you think it's the awareness of the power of it and
Europe, of course, is a continent, and I don't know that continents have awareness. So that's obviously what you meant. But I'm being unfair. So It depends on whom you ask. It depends entirely on whom you ask. I mean, all the people I talk to and all the applicants, they are, of course, aware, and most of my colleagues are aware. But there are even in research itself, even in environments of fundamental research, some people say we face these huge problems of, the climate crisis, pandemics, world poverty, lack of clean water for so many, health, aging, endless. And they say, come on, guys, we've got to solve these problems. We can't have this ivory tower stuff of, doing archaeological digs or thinking about the importance of poetry or so. I feel all those are important, but some feel they aren't, and we should concentrate on these other issues. Now, I just think that's short-sighted. We know, and we've seen it time and again, that huge breakthroughs and huge discoveries are made based on fundamental science that was done for something completely different. Whether it's the phone being invented, which was based on knowledge and electromagnetism that the people who work on had no idea that phones were needed or wanted. COVID, I gave the example of endless. There's endless. And so I don't understand why those people who are right when they say we should use tax money to solve big societal problems don't see that this is not exclusive. We need both. And I'll give you another example. So the European Innovation Council, EIC, is a really good thing. It funds people who've made discoveries and who want to take them to the market, and who either already have startups or want to start a startup, and it helps them find funding and it gives them, a kickoff funding. And it does this on a completely competitive basis, completely bottom up, no programs or anything. Of the grants that were awarded this year, it was a couple of months ago or so, there were some 40-something. More than 20, so I think it was 43 were awarded and 26 or so were from the ERC. 2/3 were people who'd done their research under an ERC grant. I mean, what better proof can you have?
Yeah. So as you said, that there are still people that believe that this is exclusive, or I guess ERC is planning to make more communication about fundamental research and the impact of it. So how do you plan to make fundamental research more accessible to broad publics or ecosystems?
This is really difficult. And to be honest, I think there is no short-term solution. I think the shortest-term solution I can think of is a program that I've been thinking about of giving experienced journalists, and by journalists I mean anybody who's experienced at talking to the public. These can be bloggers, these can be YouTubers,
even podcasters.
Anybody.
The lowest of the low.
No, not at all. On the contrary, it's really important to give them better access to science, to scientists, to researchers, to learn the way that science is done. So that's one thing. That may gently change, but it'll still reach only those people who are already interested in hearing from those persons. It has to start in kindergartens. So, people have to learn how to understand the truth and understand the way research functions, so that when a scientist says, we think there's a 95% chance of this happening, but a 5% chance of it not happening, that this is a better piece of information than some fake news promoter who says, we know exactly this will happen. And, the scientists aren't even sure of what they're saying. That is something that has to be learned, and that has to be trained from very early on. Learning how to recognize the truth. That it's going to take a generation at least.
So the other thing that the ERC is invested in changing is, I know you've initiated the ERC has initiated a gender equality plan. What do you think the role of the ERC might be in promoting gender equality?
Well, again, since we don't have quotas, we rely mainly on alerting panel members, encouraging women, of course, to apply in the first place, alerting council members, training in unconscious bias, and this seems to have been working. So the proportions of success, the success rates of women have been going up, and also the number of applications from women are going up. Now, this is going to take a while to filter through the age pyramid. It's mostly, it's mostly in the youngest tier, in the synergy grants. But I think was it in the last synergy grants? I think the success rate, 43% were women. So it's really going up, and the success rates for women are no higher than for men. So this recognition that something needs to be done is clearly there in the minds of people, and just like I described it for the less well supported countries or regions.
Okay, thanks. So that's been great. So we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and hear more about Maria out of the lab.
Hey folks, don't run away. You're listening to The Lonely Pipette with Renaud Pourpre and Jonathan Weissman. where our goal is to help scientists do better science.
If you're enjoying the show and you want to learn more, you can follow us on Twitter at Lonely Pipette, and please share the podcast with your friends.
If you don't want to miss any of our future episodes, you can subscribe to our mailing list and join our community. Click on the subscription link on our Twitter account.
It's as simple as that. Take a few moments to get more tips from the Lonely Pipette. So welcome back. You're listening to The Lonely Pipette with Maria Leptin. So we heard your great visions for the ERC. We want to go down to more sort of daily. Do you have a morning routine? How does the day start for Maria Leptin?
Stay in bed as long as I possibly can.
And what does that mean? Because does that mean 5:30 instead of 5? Or?
Are you joking? No way. No. I mean, meetings before 9 for me are an absolute no-no. Sometimes one has to, and then one does. But no. And on weekends, 10, 11, 11:30.
Where is that?
How does it start? What happens when you get out of bed?
Okay, I get up, take a shower, get myself ready, get dressed, and go to the office. And in the office, I have a coffee and a cookie and start work on whatever work needs to be done.
Okay. What is something about yourself that people be surprised to discover?
I have no idea. What would they be surprised? I don't know. I feel I'm sort of totally normal and there's nothing surprising. I don't even have any secrets, I don't think.
Or is there a kind of unusual habit or absurd thing that you love and people are not aware of?
Well, I do my yoga regularly and will not miss it. I go to my ballet training whenever I can, but that's not unusual. I love my children. The family is the most important. Love my husband. Looking forward to going off to France with all of them meeting them in France for Easter. But these are all pretty normal things, Mothers love their husbands and their children, and people have their hobbies. Gardening,
right?
I spend time in the garden.
Sure. So you mentioned several activities outside of science and everything. So can you think of one that has impacted your work in a positive learning way as a scientist?
No, I don't think so. No, they're quite science unrelated, really. I think all my impact from science comes from within science, and of course from colleagues. From discussions with colleagues, and now also with the children. I'm interested to hear what they say. I sometimes ask them for advice. So
family's important, work's important, ballet's important. How do you get the balance of the work, personal and...
I don't quite see it like that. So I'll do my work any time of day or night on weekends, because I don't see it as, now I have to spend time on something that somebody else pays me to do, and now I do the stuff that I really like. It's just not like that. I feel incredibly fortunate that somebody's giving me a lot of money to do stuff that I find enjoyable. And, most of the time. But then some of the time, the stuff you do in your private life is also not so enjoyable. So, I just don't see it. For me, there's very little distinction. It all melds into each other.
So can you think of an individual, a celebrity, or I don't know, anyone that inspired you for your life and work that is outside of science, if possible?
Well, I have mentioned my school teacher in biology in the past. She was what you would at the time call a spinster, and she was very spinsterish. She was skinny and tiny with her grey hair tied into a tight bun, and she wore this long black overcoat and would hurry around in her small steps. But she was just such a deeply impressive personality. And, that's part what got me into biology. But otherwise, my husband, I really admire his thinking and his insight, his generosity. So he's an inspiration. We talk about...
Is he a scientist?
Yeah. He's a immunologist and evolutionary biologist.
Right. So if you had $100 million or euros to spend in science, but not in an experiment, how would you spend them?
that is really unfair. Because I'll tell you why that's unfair. Because when I interview graduate students, or I used to interview graduate students for the EMBL graduate program, or also here in Cologne earlier for our graduate programs, that's one question I ask them. Not because there's a good answer to it, but because I like to hear how they respond to that question.
Wow.
So
we didn't know.
So you've heard lots of answers.
I'm not being asked that. That's and I don't have a good answer. Of course, I now am at the top of an organization that has a lot more money to spend, and I think that they are spending that money just right. I talk to people who open institutes or who run institutes, and I've in fact just come back from Bulgaria and Sofia, where a new institute for computer science and artificial intelligence was just opened. And what I would do is, I've always worked in small institutes throughout my life. No, not small institutes, large institutes with a philosophy of having small groups. And I think that's the most important, to have really bright individuals, creative individuals, at a very shallow hierarchy. So small groups of individuals who are given complete freedom in an environment where they interact well with each other. So that's what I would do. And, of course, one would try and find a topic that wasn't completely Grace dry already, but I wouldn't be doing top-down. I would not be trying to guess the future, although I've just been asked to sit on the panel to guess what are going to be the challenges of the future. So, but that's I would do more about supporting a structure that allows bright people to follow their nose in a good environment.
What's an achievement that you're particularly proud of, and why?
Well, I mean, of course, I'm proud of my children.
Okay.
In science, I think I'm proud of the early work that I did when I was first a group leader. And, I did stuff that wasn't sort of mainstream, and it came out very nicely. I was helped by a wonderful technician whose abilities and talents I recognized, and we worked well together. So that was fun, because that was really, really my very own brainchild. Nobody told me to do that. Nobody directed me. That was fun. That was good.
So can you now think of a time when things didn't go as planned, but one specific event that's taught you something, maybe? Well,
I already told you about my PhD. Then from when I was a postdoc in Cambridge, everybody else went to the US and became a big professor in the US. So that's what I wanted to do too. I never managed for a number of reasons, but partly because a different job offer came. But again, I don't look at it that way. There are always hurdles, problems, impasses. So you just work around them and either do something else or find another way of doing what you were meant to be doing.
So we have a couple of quick questions to wrap up. Do you have a sentence written on the door of your office or your lab? And if not, what would it be?
I don't know. Try harder, or enjoy what you're doing. No, I don't have nothing specific.
Or maybe I phrase it differently. If you could meet yourself at the beginning of your career, what advice would you give yourself?
I think I'd die of embarrassment. What advice would I give myself? I think I'd try and tell that silly girl to be a little more mellow and, take it easy. Don't take yourself so seriously. Don't be so self-important. I don't know. I don't know. I can't say that I would do it differently because, like I said, I didn't sort of plan to do things and then failed. I just did what came. And so I'd do that again. I'd go into engineering. I'd do a different field. I just think engineering is so much fun and so exciting. But that's a trivial point.
Yeah. So, but can I get back to why will you feel embarrassed to meet yourself?
Oh, because I think I was awful. I mean, I'd be embarrassed to see myself like that. I'm embarrassed if I think about it now. That's why.
We'll also be talking to people who met you then.
So we are going to wrap up, and we thank you so much for all those tips and hints into your backstory and your story. Where can people find out more about you and your work?
Gosh, I don't know. I have not written
Just
an autobiography, nor do
or-
I intend to write one. You know, I don't know. Anybody really wants to know something very specific, they can, of course, write to me.
Right.
Okay. So thank you very much for your time. I know your time is very, very precious, and thank you for all the investment to have accepted without making the decision to run this enormous organization.
So that's it for this episode. Thank you for joining us at The Lonely Pipette.
We hope that you learned something new, that something resonated with your own experiences, or that you just enjoyed the science.
Let us know your thoughts on Twitter at Lonely Pipette, and please share it with your friends in the lab. If you want to join our community, you can subscribe to the Lonely Pipette mailing list or mail us by following the link available on our Twitter profile. You will receive the next episodes directly in your mailbox. How cool is that?
Stay tuned for the next show, and remember, you might feel like a lonely pipette, but it doesn't mean you're alone. Tips from the Lonely Pipette can help you to do better science.
À bientôt!
À bientôt!